Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Photography Tips and Tricks. This is episode number 2, and today I'm going to give you 7 tips that helped me grow as a photographer and be better in general at photography, and hopefully this will extend to you and help you out as well. I think that's a very straightforward and to-the-point intro, so I'm just going to jump right into it with number 1. Number 1, try to shoot with one lens for a while. Preferably, this would be with a prime lens so you don't have the ability to change your focal length. When you shoot only with one lens, you are restricting yourself to one specific focal length, one view, one angle, I guess you could say, of lens. And when you do that, you're forced to take photos differently. If you're used to shooting really tight, like a telephoto, kind of like 85mm lens for everything, try to shoot wide. Go out and try a 24mm for a while. You'll find that you have to take photos differently than you do with an 85. You'll find that when you have to take photos differently based on what lens you have and what focal length you have, that you're thinking about things differently, that things look a lot different, and you might notice some things that you didn't look at before. So trying to shoot with one lens for a while can be really beneficial. Number 2, learn how to use your camera in manual mode. I think most people are going to say this is self-explanatory if you become a photographer, whether that be an amateur photographer or a professional photographer, but personally, I only shoot in manual settings because I feel like, well, it's not just I feel, it is, I have absolute control over every aspect of my photo. I know exactly how much light's going to come into it, I know what the background's going to look like, I know everything about this photo because I'm controlling all of it, and I want to stay in control because I like my photos to look a certain way. So if you at least understand how manual settings work, it will help you when you're using auto settings so you can understand what's going wrong with the photo. It will also help you become a better photographer when you decide that you want to use manual settings anyways, because like I said, you have a grasp of all aspects of how your photo is going to turn out. Number 3, shoot regularly over time. When you exercise what you're doing a lot, you get better at it. But if you overdo it too quick, then you're going to burn out. Just like with exercising your body, you wouldn't go and lift for 12 hours straight in a single day. You would lift for 12 hours over the period of a month, maybe 3 hours a week. So shooting regularly and over time will definitely help you out. Number 4, focus less on the gear that you want and more on the gear that you have. Out of all the cameras I've owned, out of all the lenses I've owned, out of all the gimbals I've owned, out of all the tripods and the lights and the flashes and everything I've ever owned, no piece of equipment made me a better photographer than just shooting often and understanding how my camera worked. I have taken not so great photos with a camera that has almost 50 megapixels, and I've taken fantastic photos on a $5 point and shoot film camera. So because your gear doesn't really matter as much anymore, at least when we're talking about digital specifically, like when you're talking about an entry-level DSLR that cost barely $300 and a very high-grade $5,000 Leica, right? A lot of the photos will look very similar. Most people would have a hard time telling the difference because most of the time when we see these photos are on the internet where they are really compressed and the resolution is not that high, or it's on a small phone screen. So it's so small that you could take a picture on a potato and it would look pretty good still. So focus on what you have and less on what you want, because what you want won't make you better. Well, if you need it, or if you just want it and you have the money for it, I'm not saying don't get it, but it's not going to make you any better. Number 5, you don't have to travel to get good photos. I had this thought for a long time when I started doing photography again, that where I lived was boring and pretty much everything around me was not interesting whatsoever. I didn't like the neighborhood I was in. I didn't like the city that I was in. I thought I needed to go travel to get better pictures, so I was constantly driving to find photos rather than looking for photos right where I was. If you look at where you're at through the eyes of a visitor, maybe somebody who's never been there before, you'll see things that are like little hidden gems and little photography scenes that you hadn't noticed before because you're looking at it in a different way. And when we're doing anything creative, looking at things in different ways with different angles and through a different lens, I guess you could say, is much more beneficial than just going somewhere different that looks different. That being said though, if you're stuck in a rut, sometimes traveling to a new place can kind of like kickstart that photography motivation, I guess. So I'm not saying you have to stay in one place, but staying in one place can be beneficial at times, and it's not always a bad thing to take pictures of the same area for a while. Number 6 is probably the most important on the list, so if you ignore all of them but this one, just make sure you pay attention to number 6 at least. Focus on getting your photos right when you take them and not fixing them when you edit. Personally, I don't edit really at all. I adjust contrast sometimes, I might darken some shadows and bring up some highlights, and I'll change photos from colorful to completely black and white. Other than that, I don't really edit very much. There's nothing wrong with Photoshop. There's nothing wrong with adding clouds and stars when there wasn't clouds and stars, but there is something that's a little off about constantly editing your photos to fix them and make them a good photo when it was not a good photo to begin with. If you make sure that your framing and your composition is right inside the camera, then when you offload it and you start editing, your workflow process is going to be way easier if you already know that your photos are good coming to the computer than if they're not so good on your computer and you have to edit them to make them a decent photo. And lastly, we have number 7, and number 7 is one that might be a little controversial to some people, so hear me out. Let me say everything I'm going to say and then give me your comments about it afterwards if you disagree. Number 7, just take the picture. Just go ahead and take the picture. If you don't take the picture, you have no way of choosing to share or not share, post or not post the picture because you don't have a picture to take. You also don't have the ability to look back on that picture and say, oh, I should have shot it this way, or I should have shot it from this angle, because you don't have a picture to reference. Now, this is kind of specifically regarding street photography. So I've missed a lot of photo opportunities because I was too embarrassed to go up and take a picture of somebody or take a picture of something or take a picture of a certain scene, for whatever reason. Now, there are situations where you probably should not take the picture, and that would be like somebody who needs help, someone who just got in a car crash and you should be calling 911 to help them out, and you choose to take pictures of them trying to crawl out of all the broken glass and smoke, and you're just taking pictures to get really emotional, amazing photos, but somebody is needing help and you're not helping them. You have to decide for yourself whether it's morally okay for you to post a picture knowing that people are going to use it for one thing or another thing or think something of it. So I'm not saying you can't take those pictures. I'm not saying that you shouldn't take those pictures. I am saying that you should take those pictures and then really think for yourself after the fact whether you should post it or not. And this will make you a better photographer because it will make you a more conscious photographer. Especially in regards to street photography, documentary photography, any sort of photography where you are photographing people, you are capturing a split second, 1/100th of a second frame of a huge thing that happened. So you can pick and choose what you want the scene to look like or what you want to convey a message wise. So you can make people look angry, you can make people look peaceful, you can make people look happy, you can make them look more sad than they are. So I think that there is a definite burden upon people who are taking the pictures to decide what photos to use, when to use them, whether they should post them or not. But I do think that it is better to have taken the photo and to then decide for yourself than it is to just not take the photo at all, because like I said, you don't have anything to work with. And especially as you're first getting started, I think you should make mistakes and take pictures that maybe you shouldn't take, so then you understand why not to take those photos, so then you can avoid them in the future. So that is my kind of controversial tip, and it's the last one. I know I probably talked for too long on that one, but that one I think is important. Just go ahead and take the picture in most cases, not all cases, and then decide for yourself after the fact. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram, which is right here, and my website. You can check out a lot of blog posts and photos right there. Josh the Collins on Instagram and joshthecollins.com for my website, because I'm very original. So that'll be it. Thanks again. I'll see you in the next video.